further ado, my name is Charles Anyanwu, and I am the Director for Strategy, Funding, and Stakeholder Management at the Lagos State Employment Trust Fund. And today, at this opening plenary, we will be discussing building back better post-COVID-19, mobilizing corporate partnerships to enhance support for the small and growing business ecosystem in West Africa. And with me today, we have a very distinguished lady, Osayi Alile, who is the CEO of Aspire Coronation Trust Foundation, ACT Foundation, as they are popularly known, Osayi. We will also have with us Mr. Peter Bamkole of Enterprise Development Center. And finally, we will have Mr. Ebenezer, who is the founder and CEO of Wangara Green Ventures, which essentially is an impact investing outfit focused mostly on the environment. So if my discussants would like to just make a very quick comment so that we can identify them, I would be very pleased. Thank you, Osayi.
Good morning, everyone. It's Ebenezer.
Thank you, Ebenezer. Is Oga Bamki available?
Oh, sorry, good morning, Banky here. How are you?
Good morning, Banky. Good morning. Welcome, everybody. We'd just like very quickly to commence this session now. And when we hear building back better post-COVID-19, it just suggests that there's a lot that was unanticipated and led to significant challenges, not just for small and growing businesses, but for everyone generally, business, personal level as well, emotional and physical as well. We all went through a lot since March last year. And so this conversation around how do we come out of that better? How do we learn? What are some of the learnings from this experience? How do we use that to improve not just our businesses, but even ourselves individually? So I think my first question then to the panelists would be, how, given the constraints posed by COVID, how have we been able to reposition ourselves to be more effective given these constraints, and how should other SGBs position themselves to take advantage of the new opportunities, because in all of this there are new opportunities. So how can we advise them to improve themselves or take advantage of this new opportunity? I would like to start with this distinguished lady in the house. Osayi, if you don't mind, can you share with us how you've been doing it and what advice you would give to some of the SGBs present?
Good morning, everyone. It's a real pleasure to be here, and so glad to also have my fellow panelists who we've had conversations with. Charles, thank you so much. I mean, we're starting on the right note, talking about how do we position ourselves. I mean, we know that the global economy has become largely knowledge-based and technology-driven, and the pace of technology innovation has rapidly grown. And there's nothing, we can't delude ourselves. It's something that is here to stay. And as an organization, for us personally, the increase of our quality and impact of our projects are really, for us, it's really a time to innovate and do things in a different way. And it's not even talking about only the big things, even little tiny things that you have been thinking about. You have to start thinking, how do we do things different? How do we manage where we are at the moment? What do we do? And even for us in supporting SGBs, we're introducing them to relevant business development, investment opportunities across Africa. We're also asking them to think more innovative and more technologically as well. mind my English and my language. But in positioning ourselves, another thing we must also realize that although innovation is an ongoing activity, every one of us must learn to innovate by itself. Every organization is different. We're all on different paces. We're all on different journeys. And so you can't look at Foundation or look at EDC and say, oh, I want to be exactly like that. You have to look inwards and say to yourself, where am I on this journey? So when an organization is saying to you that, oh, all my staff now, we're all working from home, you must also know that it might not work for your own organization. You might have to build in the hybrid method in yours. So we must all look at that. But it's a journey rather than a destination. It's not like we're rushing somewhere. We're all working towards something, and we must all do it at our own pace as well. And that's when you mentioned, Charles, the mental part of thinking, the emotional, all those things are all combined together. Because really, technology and circumstances are all constantly changing. We don't even know what's going to happen next month. As we are saying that the world is opening, I mean, look at the numbers, even in Nigeria today, it's beginning to increase again. So nobody knows what's going to happen. So we have to be very circumstantial about how we plan our ways, how we are thinking through the processes, how we are positioning ourselves. So in today's highly dynamic environment, the culture of innovation is key, and it's a daily thinking, a daily like, oh, what do we do different? And that's why the leadership of any organization must constantly be flexible and must realize that they cannot solve all the problems in one day. So everybody is, learning from each other. And that's where, talking about partnerships, collaboration, working together, asking other organizations, what are you doing? How do we do things different? How can you help us to think through these processes? So, but unfortunately, as we also know, in too many circumstances, the king has no clothes. So even as you say, innovation is king, how do we manage that and clothe the king in the garments that it requires? And so that's why technology now is no longer in the future, it's in the present. We must all learn to utilize it, we must harness it, we must build it, we must build our organizations to think in that regard. And technology must allow us to be more effective, to increase our reach while reducing cost as well. More than ever before, it's more important for organizations to be more creative and embrace the flexibility of work. And I'm hoping that every one of us here today opens our mind to think through these processes, and that the culture of space and all those things will change, and we'll be ready for it. So that's what I would tell the SGBs today, thinking of it. And that's why we're constantly telling ourselves. Another thing also we must mention, Charles, is that you can't know it all. It's almost impossible. I mean, so we cannot live and work in isolation anymore, because even the person that you think knows does not even know. So we must be open to learn, be open to make mistakes, and also, of course, calculated risks as well, calculated mistakes, but also be open to allow our staff and who we work with to be able to come up with solutions to whatever situations we find ourselves in. It's an interesting journey, and I mean, we're all in it together, and nobody knows where the end is going to take us to. So that's why I keep on saying it's not a destination, but it's a journey.
Thank you very much, Osayi. I mean, there's so many nuggets I've picked out from just this from your response. So I hear you on time to innovate, and if there's anything that we have seen as a result of the constraints posed by the pandemic, is that technology has started to play a key role in how businesses begin to operate and how they are able to scale their businesses. And we saw during the pandemic the death of a globally renowned retail chain that had not embraced technology. And in listening, in hearing you say technology is the now, not the future, and it just begs to wonder what we are, how SGBs are able to look inward and how they are using technology to help deliver efficiency in their business. And I think this is a good time to segue into my next question, which is actually for Bamkole, because I know that EDC does a lot of capacity building for businesses, and prior to the pandemic, there was a lot of classroom sessions happening and providing resources to businesses. I'd just like to know from you, Bamkole, how are you embracing technology? How is it redefining your business? And how, when you meet with these businesses now, what's the narrative? How do they say that this is impacting them, and what feedback do you have for them that they can help them to do some of the things that Osayi mentioned, which is to be more efficient, to reduce cost, and also to increase their reach? I'd like to know, your take on this. Thank you.
Okay, thanks a lot, Charles, and thanks my co-panelists. And it's great to be back again to the conference. We missed it somehow last year. We wanted to be there physically in Ghana, and hopefully we will do that sometimes next year. If you come out of the COVID period and you have not learned a lot, then you will have missed a wonderful time of retreat. We considered the pandemic period as a great retreat time for all of us, because it gave us the opportunity to rethink our business model. We have been doing things in a particular way. For some of us, it worked. But what the pandemic did for us is to say, hey, hold on. Rethink this business model, because life is going to change completely. Now, I say to people, let's assume that tomorrow COVID ends. If you don't still do something about it, you will have missed that opportunity, because something else will happen. It may not be COVID, it can be something else. But one thing I can guarantee you is that it's going to happen. It may not be 2021, it may not be 2022, but it's going to happen. So the earlier we get to prepare ourselves and position for the next wave of whatever that will happen, then the better we're going to be. So flexibility in being able to pivot very quickly is something that we'll have taken out of this. We need to learn fast and very quickly in all that we do. We need to have some kind of chip in our head that help us to process things very quickly as we see them. And as I reflect on how we have done that in the last 15 months, maybe 2 years, we were maybe lucky to some extent, because we had been thinking digitally prior to the pandemic. So we were not starting from ground zero. So we had a head start compared to most people. But we were still not as prepared because our clients were not prepared. And so we had all the e-learning, LMS, everything ready, but our clients, our students, were not fully prepared. Now, the situation today is that both us and them are now fully prepared. A typical program that we will do for 30 days, face-to-face, we will no longer do 30 days straight anymore. We will do 15 days face-to-face, and the remaining we will do online, whether it is asymmetrical or symmetrical. And what that means for us is that we become a lot more efficient. On Monday, we started a new class, which I took. And as I reflect on that class, it was very interesting for me, because I was able to bring in Ayodeji Megbokwe, which was the case we were discussing that day. She was somewhere in Bagada. She couldn't join us physically, and then we just zoomed her in. The conversation was rich. The experience was phenomenal. There's no way I will have brought that case study to life if I didn't bring her virtually into my classroom. Now, supposing Ayo traveled to the US, I could have done exactly the same thing. So this is one of the examples that COVID and the new experience is helping us to achieve, which we could not have achieved before. Now, apart from that, it also means that when those students experience that, enjoyed it, then it becomes easier for them to do the same in their own organization. And so post-COVID, we are super ready. The recipients are now also becoming ready. So now we're able to do the kind of visits that we normally do. If I have to go to Nasarawa today to inspect, it will take me like 2 full days. I may miss my flight, delayed flight, roads, all kinds of stuff. All I now need is to have a 1 or 2 hour solid quality time on Zoom, virtually, or wherever with the clients. And that's it. And every single thing that they want me to do, I can do it virtually. So there's cost reduction on both sides. There is time efficiency on all our sides. Yes, we may not be able to achieve 100% exactly the same thing as physical, but we know that at least we will achieve 90-something%. And in closing, it's also not to say, let's do it. We need to professionally prepare ourselves. So like this year, and I'm glad that Margaret is here, with our efforts and with that of LPI in the UK, we developed our people to be able to teach online, and they were all certified. So whatever we do, we need to think of it professionally, and we need to be ready for the next opportunity. I see them as opportunity, not as a problem. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Banky. I heard so many things, pivoting, and the flexibility to do that. And you also talked about efficiency, improved efficiency, and that is essentially what technology is supposed to help us achieve. And people say technology is not a strategy. Technology is an enabler of strategy. And so I think in any case, the constraints posed by has forced us to really look deep down inside, and in just also reflecting on the words from Osayi about we have to look inward now. It's not about the small things. It's not about the big things as well. It's more about the small things rather. So when you talk about rethinking business model, like Banky mentioned, I then need to ask Ebenezer, because you are in the business of providing access to financing, and you provide patient capital, which is something that over the years, it's been said that a lot of businesses in developing countries, especially in Africa, require to be able to take the next step forward. The pandemic has also posed a lot of risks and concerns about how viable businesses are. It has tested a lot of business models within this very short period. I'd like to know from you, Ebenezer, from a flexibility perspective, what is your approach now to, one, measuring impact, as well as the evaluation of the riskiness that you see in the businesses that you are looking to support?
Thank you very much, Charles, and good morning to my fellow panelists and everyone on the call. That's a very packed question, and I will continue from what Banky said. Banky mentioned something else will happen, and as we even look at this post-pandemic world, that something else is already happening. We have seen what's going on in Canada. Temperatures going all the way to 49 degrees Celsius. We've seen those floods that happened in Germany. We've seen the recent landslides in India. Extreme weather conditions are really going to be the norm. And I think one major takeaway from the pandemic was that there were first the need to digitalize. There was also the need to, in a way, localize some services and secure certain value chains and make sure countries individually have some level of security. But then most people are realizing that climate change is real, and it can be as equally disruptive and destructive as COVID-19. And so everybody is talking about the green recovery. And for us at Wangara, I think that we find it that being a green fund, this is a time where we find ourselves and our work quite relevant. Our earlier decision to address this, we think, has been validated. But we think it gives everyone reason to relook at how we are doing things, right? We all need to look at our business models again. And this is very, very key, because as we look at this new world we are entering into, the nature of it is going to be shifting to a green economy. We already have a lot of talk about the net zero transition. We have seen Larry Fink in the previous years double down on his letters. And so for countries such as ours, Ghana, a lot of West African countries where governments are reliant sometimes on donor funding, IDA, a lot of that funding is going to be tied to being green. And so I think that this should be at the core of our business. I'll give a few reasons. I think that first and foremost, the challenges that are posed by climate change in themselves, the opportunities that can be harnessed by the SGBs if they adapt well. We've seen a company, for example, we looked at that is using the waste from their production to now create protein feed for their feed production. But the capital that's going to be available, there's increasingly more capital available for the green transition, and this is going to be more affordable as well. So the earlier we shift, the better positioned we are. And I would also say that this is also a survival issue for the businesses and for our people. We at Wangara, we have really looked at all these, and beyond the operational changes that we had to go through because of COVID, we had to shift to remote work. We were fortunate that before COVID, we were using a lot of digital tools. So it made that transition for us a bit smooth. It also saved us money, I would say. We are no longer keeping a big office, and we are able to deploy that money and also conserve a bit of it as everybody is tightening their belt. We also had to really change the way we go about our due diligence. We had to get more comfortable with doing our due diligence remotely, and having that touch point very limited and very essential, but making sure that we made the most of these touch points. And we've also had to, within the same period, look at even how we support our portfolio companies and the type of instruments that we deploy, right? We realized from the COVID that in doing your typical due diligence pre-COVID, you always had a kind of a checklist for what could go wrong or if there was a crisis or an emergency, but you never really planned for the actions that would be taken if that happened, right? And the COVID really taught us that in doing our due diligence and looking at deals, we needed to always have these kind of actions clearly defined and identified to be able to even react. At least if you have a plan, you can follow it to a certain extent. We have had this situation whereby for some of the instruments we deployed, following COVID and its disruption to some of the businesses, we have to go back and change the instrument and realize that maybe because of COVID, some of the SGBs and at the stage at which they are, even though the initial cash flow tells you that they can take debt, when there is such a disruption, they just will not be able to sustain debt, right? And you need to have ways around that. It's made us rethink the kind of instruments we use. It's made us rethink our flexibility in terms of how we approach our deal structuring to allow room for being able to go back and amend things to suit the business's current needs. I would maybe just end by saying that for businesses, whilst they go through these changes, a lot that Osayi and Bamkole have spoken about, they need to be also thinking seriously about their business continuity or crisis management plans. And this is something that increasingly a lot of investors are going to look out for, because as we do our due diligence, we look at making investments, we will look at business as usual. But COVID has taught us that life cannot be predictable, and we need to always plan for extreme cases. So this means being a bit more tempering sometimes our optimism in terms of our growth projections, and having scaled down options as to what if things go wrong, and also being a bit more open to instruments that suit where we are, rather than being very stuck on always going for debt, because sometimes we want certain controls and our valuations, we want to keep it at a certain point. So a kind of chaos conversations before they start. So I think a bit of pragmatism and realism today is very important for everyone, even as we live life after COVID-19. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ebenezer. So just a quick question, just a follow-on question from that. And I mean, I understand that this may not hold true for everybody, but for your organization, when you spoke about being pragmatic about the instruments that you're using now, because of course, access to capital is a very critical ingredient for the growth of SGBs. Would you say equity, quasi-equity, debt, or maybe even grants? What do you think is working now?
It's a difficult question to answer, given that, I mean, different businesses will have different needs and different requirements. But what we've realized as a business ourselves, as an investor, is that even companies that we felt were very comfortable with debt after the COVID pandemic happened, were not in a position to be able to take debt and needed some kind of restructuring or additional funding or flexibility. So I would say immediately after COVID, debt may not be the most attractive. And if it has to be looked at, it needs to be very concessional and very, very flexible and bespoke. And that shifts us more to the quasi-equity or quasi-debt kind of instrument. So that even if the business can't take equity, which may be preferable, the debt should have some flexibility considering their circumstances. For example, what's the period of moratorium we are giving them? Are we requiring payment of both the principal and the interest, or we are holding on to some of the principal to allow them use a bit of that principal to grow and not require taking in more money? And so I think that post-pandemic debt should be thought about very critically. If it is very short term, it is project driven, the cash flows are very predictable within a short period of time, then yes, maybe. But then that is where we need partnerships with other financial institutions in the ecosystems like banks. We need to help them to be able to access some of the impact investment funds and climate funds out there to co-invest with us, so that our funds as impact investors, for example, could go into the quasi-equity, which are more patient, whereas funding from the banks and other non-bank financial institutions could address a bit of those short-term trading needs that are much more predictable, you know. So I think we need more, if I would say, collaboration amongst various financiers to help this. We are doing something with Solidaridad and ACMEA, where we are providing some concessional debt to oil palm companies which are trying to go green. And these are very concessional and flexible. And the hope is that once they're able to work with that, we can then come in with equity-like investment later on. So I think we need these kind of conversations. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Ebenezer. I have had encouraged for us to ask our questions in the chat box. There is a question from Suzanne. Suzanne, I see your question. I will get to it very quickly, but just before I do that, there has been a lot of talk around partnerships, around the readiness. Banky mentioned something about they were ready, but some of their partners were not ready. And so at this particular question, I'd like to ask Osayi very quickly if what has been the shape of partnerships since the pandemic, because I know that you do a lot of work supporting SDGs, and there's a lot of grant making that goes into that, and grant making requires a pool of funding from multiple partners to make that happen. I just like to get a sense of how you've been able to, or how your organization is managing that, and if there is any information you have out there in terms of advice to SDGs on how they can go about with their partnerships going forward.
Thank you so much, Charles. Ebenezer, thank you so much for what you, all the nuggets you threw out as well. I was also jotting a few things, and I'm planning. I mean, we're all at a place where we're all learning and we're opening our minds. And I like Banky and Ebenezer spoke a lot about flexibility as well. I think I also mentioned that. So everyone has to come with a mindset of that these will occur and we need to be ready for them. So when we talk about partnerships, us as an organization, that's really the core of what we do. But when we started our own as Arts Foundation, I mean, we were very specific about the kind of partnerships, collaborations we wanted. I must say that in the last year, because of the pandemic, I mean, things have completely left, the coffers of paper, and the realism of what is going on in the world has made us realize that we need to find new partners. We need to work in a different ways. The social sector where I work in, and the SGBs that work in the social space, we have our focus on corporate partnership is really key, and rightly so. There's a growing recognition from the corporate world of the role that they play in issues and how they must become, we almost come as a common, everyone must come together to solve the issues that we are seeing and collaborate in finding solutions to the problems and the challenges that we are seeing. So corporate partnership is key. It helps organizations to do more. Of course, we know that it dwindled a lot in this season, but for me particularly, there was a spike. And people were coming out asking for more. They wanted us to, because they saw the relevance of what we're doing. And for us in the sector, I mean, the last 1 year, we realized also that regardless of the pandemic, everything else is still a challenge. I mean, health issues are still out there. Climate issues are still out there. I mean, environmental issues are there, and they were getting worse. I mean, a lot of the things that we thought we had moved forward on, we realized that we're taking 10 steps back, and we had to quickly deal with the issues. I mean, let's look at maternal issues as well. So SGBs that are dealing with maternal issues, in the last 1 year, the numbers and the spike in maternal challenges have increased significantly. So when you see those things happening, what do you need to do? I know Ebenezer mentioned the flexibility of looking for quasi collaborations in getting the challenges and solutions you require. So it's the same thing we had to do. We had to think. It's imperative to make sure that the corporate and social partnerships are not only based on those profits, but on collaboration. And there's always a space for partnerships, and we need to think through those things. So for me, there was a spike because people kept coming to me, we need to do more. How do we get involved? And nobody wanted to go to the streets themselves, before they would send their staff. But no, I mean, half of the time, everybody was stuck at home. And a lot of the people that we have as international organizations were sending their people back home. So we as Africans were stuck doing the work that Africans are supposed to be doing in the first place. So when we were not looking outside, everybody started looking inwards. And that's why we feel to ourselves that those things, the thinking of how with the challenges that we face, we're looking for people to come and solve it for us. There is no solution outside of your own spectrum. So we need to think of those solutions. So in terms of common trends, I mean, what I always tell SGBs, including the social sector, is utilize technology. And I know Banky mentioned those things. Technology, we know, is no longer the future, is the present. We must learn to utilize it. We must learn to harness its power, because there's power in it. I mean, Banky gave a lot of examples. Ebenezer has given a lot of examples on changes that have been made. And I must tell you that in terms of numbers, even for us in our reach, it has spiked significantly, because a lot of the things that we thought everybody has to go into a certain, we had to spread the costs. So people, I mean, we realized that a lot of things had to be done remotely. But even if we are going to sites because it was necessary to go to site, you find that you were doing things the best way possible because you wanted to get out of this. You know, so the times that you would travel before to the north and stay 7 days and just be there. Nobody wants to stay 7 days anymore. Nobody even wants to travel. You know, people were worried about traveling. I mean, a lot of times we had to travel. I mean, the whole lockdown, we were on the road because the kind of work we do is in communities. You cannot be dealing with cancer issues and be sitting at in your house and talking to the hospitals from there. So we had to be flexible about the partnerships we're looking for. But during the pandemic, of course, a lot of partnerships that were coming in were based on the pandemic issues. But a lot of times I kept on reminding them that a lot of the other challenges they were facing are still going to be there when the COVID pandemic, you think, is going to be over soon. It's going to be over. We are having, abuse of women increased significantly by almost 70%. Domestic violence was increasing. So all these things, so utilize technology, see what you can do. And I know that some people are not ready, but it's necessary to do. Take advantage of non-financial support. A lot of times we're looking for financial support. You know, we want cash. But this is also the time to think, what are the other things that are out there that are non-financial and which can be technological based and all that. And we used a lot of non-financial support during this time as well. Look to crowdfunding. Ebenezer mentioned other types of options that are out there. Adaptability is key. Disruption is here, so we have to be able to adapt. Prioritize the challenges. It's not everything that you must do at a certain time. So for us, we had to kind of scale back and then move forward. So when I mean scale back, not in terms of doing the work, but in terms of the priority, what was more important at this particular time? Because of course, your funding and your partners, they want things to be done in a certain way now. So you have to think through that process and see, okay, what works for you? And then matching geographies. We now started working with other organizations in other countries. Of course, I couldn't go to Kenya. So I started looking for nonprofits that are working there that could go into the communities to look at what we needed to look at. And of course, because we also have, our processes are very, very clear. So it was easy to now begin to work with other partners as well. And then trying to find supporting staff. I mean, these things are, we don't talk about it, but it's key finding people that understand where you are at the given time and are willing to work and be flexible to move where it's necessary. So all these things are key and they're all important. So we all focus, but partnerships are out there, but open your mind to be more flexible about what else is there. So if you have been getting grants or, this is the only thing I know, what else is there? What else can I find? Who else is doing what? And look outside of your space sometimes. I mean, the people that founded us during the time of the pandemic were not people that we thought in our wildest dreams could get funding from. They are not part of our space. So they were the ones that were key at that time. But so all these things help. I think I've mentioned like six different common trends that can help you at this season. And I'm hoping that also helps the SGBs that are listening. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Osayi, so I just want to very quickly take a question from one of the panelists. I know that we are quickly running out of time. And Susan Rolfson, I hope I got that correct. She's asked, please, could you share your success stories of private sector engagement in SME support in a time where private sector is also struggling? I cannot think of a better person to ask this question than my big brother Banky, because you were working significantly with a lot of small and growing businesses. Are there any success stories that you can give us that can help to energize others in this space as well? Thank you, Banky.
Okay, first of all, let me start with the good news. The good news is that despite what Osayi alluded to very correctly, that the issues are becoming bigger, resources are dwindling individually, but what has happened in recent times is that people are more open to collaboration. And so what I could have done to have an outcome of, let's say, 10, I could maybe now only afford 5. But because I'm collaborating with others, we can achieve 50. And because people understand that now, resources are being deployed efficiently. But people will not do that anyhow. They are going to look for intermediaries that are doing very well, that can deliver very well, and those are the basis of conversation today. And so we have actually seen an increase in the support to small business, small and growing businesses in the last 15 months. Because private sector people, they still have a soul somehow, and they have a responsibility to also be part of the solution to the problem which none of us caused, all right? And so that moral responsibility is still driving them to assist, to work with SGBs, even though they have limited resources. But there are some that, well, they're lucky, they still have the capacity to be able to deliver. I'll give you one example of such. MasterCard Foundation, for instance, we were able to sign with them on the Transforming Nigerian Youth just around the pandemic side. And because we had positioned ourselves to do this digitally, we are now able to provide support to 40,000 young entrepreneurs, young people every year for the next 5 years. Now that's like 200,000 in Nigeria alone. And I know they're doing that across about 9 or 10 different countries in the developing world, especially in Africa. So those things are still there. Beyond those ones, but the thing is that we had to make sure that we all understand very clearly that the delivery must be different. The kind of support must be different. So for instance, prior to pandemic, we were building capacity of SGBs, maybe 500 to 1,000 in a year. And so with one program, we're doing 40,000. That's massive. That means we can reach more people, but in an efficient way. Secondly, we had to provide business services to some of these SGBs that have been trained. Now, ordinarily, we will have gone there one by one, they will have come. But because we can no longer do that, we have to rethink our business model. It meant that we now have to develop BDSPs ourselves who can be like us across the geographies where we are operating. And so that brings me to the next point of collaboration. During the pandemic, a few months into the pandemic, we actually did a study, and we looked at about almost 1,700 SGBs and how they were coping. And out of these 1,700 that were surveyed, about 7% of them reported that they were actually doing very well inside COVID. And so we dug deeper to check, why are you guys doing very well when everybody else was complaining? And 3 things stood out very well. The first one, of course, is what we've been talking about, the issue of digitalization, technology. You have to technologically enable the business. Everybody that did that survived and they were smiling. The second one is that you have to rethink your business model. And so somebody with a restaurant immediately remembered that the restaurant is not really the business, but the kitchen was the business, the core of the business. And so you don't need to open to the clients, and you can go to the clients so long as your kitchen remains open. But the final one is collaboration. It meant that you have to collaborate with complementary sectors. And so those in logistics, for instance, had to collaborate with not just those in the food business, but different other things so that they can deliver as and when needed. But the problem with collaboration is that you must maintain standards. So I can't just give those food or whatever to any logistic company. I have to be sure that this logistic company will deliver on time and maintain my own reputation. And so coming back to the way in which we're supporting small businesses, for the BDSPs to be able to consult and support the small businesses very well, we have to train them. We have to support them. We have to make sure that their standards are raised to the level that is not just acceptable to us, but acceptable to the small and growing businesses themselves. Today, over the last 6 months, we have now built the capacity of more than 100 BDSPs. By the end of this year, we are hoping we will reach 200. That means that we have strengthened our capacity to be able to do more without necessarily overstretching ourselves to do it ourselves. But in terms of collaborating with partners, you must have acceptable benchmark. You must guarantee quality outputs. And it is your responsibility, if you are the one sitting at the core, so that the output ultimately to everybody is still good and you are not reducing it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Banky. 11 on the dot. So we are now very hard pressed for time. We just, like to wrap up. And I think Banky has already done a little bit of that. If there are any takeaways from this session, is that you really, SGBs have to think through their business model. It's very important that they remain flexible because the market is very, and even more dynamic today. Collaboration is key because together you will go further. And then the big elephant in the room now, technology. The technology is the now, and you have to incorporate technology to remain efficient in your business today. So thank you all very much for your time. I think we are good from our end. And any final words from the discussants, and then we can close. Thank you.
Ladies first.
Banky, where you're sharing money, you should give me ladies first, though. I think we've all said it. I think innovative thinking is what leads to solutions. We need to look outside of ourselves. We must realize that we're all in this together, and the more we work together, the more solutions become easier and to get to. We have to build a good sustainability plan. We need to be creative and also be very flexible. So thank you, everyone. Enjoy the rest of the day.
From my end, I would say in all of this conversation that we've started, let us remember one thing: the mental health of our people, the wellness. It's all good, efficiency, but if we don't think about this, it's going to haunt us somewhere down the road. Thank you. Have a great conference.
Thank you all. And I would just add to the summary that Charles gave, that going green is also very, very important with the green recovery. And just a quick one on the earlier question on the impact approach. I would just say as simply as we should all try and keep it simple. It's emerging. A lot of standards are coming out. People are still trying to figure it out. If you are in doubt, just go back to the SDGs and ask yourself, which SDGs am I addressing and which simple metrics can I use to address it? And I think that would help us make our lives a bit simpler given the times we are in. So thank you all, and I wish you a very good rest of the conference. Thanks.
Thank you, Ebenezer. Thank you, Osayi. Thank you, Banky. Joshua, you have the floor.
Yeah, thanks, Charles. I will let my colleague Adoke do that.
Okay, thank you very much, Joshua. Thank you very much, our panelists. I mean, well, this is actually ending on a very high note. I want to thank you for a very enriching conversation and around entrepreneurial ecosystem can enhance growth, capacity, and finance for the SGBs. We're very grateful to our panelists, Charles Anyanwu, Osayi, Alile, Peter Bamkole, and Ebenezer for sharing their time with us. I think one of the biggest things that, I mean, it's been reiterated, collaboration, but one thing that stood out for me is that in today's highly dynamic environment, innovation is key and technology is something we must harness to become more effective, increase our reach, and reduce our costs. Thank you so much for the nuggets shared. And to take us further in our discussions this morning, I want to thank you again to our sponsors, Center for International Private Enterprise SIPE, as well as Creative Material. We will give them the next 10 minutes to share some key highlights about the work they're doing in supporting the entrepreneurial ecosystem. Lola Adekoye, I see that you're here. Lola Adekoye is from SIPE. You have the floor for the next 5 minutes, and after your presentation, Wangeshi of Creative Material would also be presenting. Lola, if you're there, please, you have the floor. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ajoke. If everyone can hear me, can you just give me a thumbs up, Ajoke? Perfect.
I can hear you.
Good morning, everyone. Great, thank you.
Good morning, Lola.
Good morning. So I would crave your indulgence to play a very short video, and then I'll come on after the video to just talk a little bit about Ethics First, which is the initiative that we get 5 minutes to talk about. I'll be happy to take questions in the chat box since we have 5 minutes, but I'm very excited to unveil Ethics First to you because frankly, it's an initiative designed by SIPE for the SGB ecosystem across Africa. So it's really for this audience right here. So just give me a minute and I will play this video.
To reduce corruption in Africa, we need cooperation from the business community. 50% of small businesses operate in the informal economy, a haven for non-transparency and non-accountability. Now, the other half find the cost of business integrity very high and the cost of corruption very low. So, the socio-economic dynamics is skewed in favor of corruption. But with global and regional partners across Africa, we developed a demand-driven initiative that can change that skewed dynamic one business at a time. It's called Ethics First.
Enter Ethics First, an innovative new platform that is doing that by giving small businesses a road to improving their governance in a recognizable and standardized way and increasing their visibility to global partners and financiers. It is the business-led answer to Africa's compliance needs. Aimed at enhancing the integration of African small businesses into global supply chains, Ethics First offers a low-cost digital solution for businesses to strengthen their governance in anti-corruption management systems and boost their global reputation. How does it work? African companies are invited to register on Ethics First and follow the program to demonstrate this trend of their commitment to the Ethics First values. www.ethicsfirst.sipe.org in 3 stages. Green, business leaders sign an integrity pledge that commits them to an ongoing process of enhancing their company's governance and compliance systems within a specified time frame. Silver, demonstrate enhanced anti-bribery and compliance measures appropriate for the size of the business and ensure effective leadership commitment to corporate ethics and integrity. Gold, complete an independent compliance and due diligence, verification and a review by the Ethics First Compliance Advisory Committee.
Stakeholders for Ethics First include African governments, African business, and civil society. For example, African governments have the ability to improve public procurement transparency during a crisis like COVID-19. Indeed, Ethics First has the potential to create a world where business reduces corruption, resulting in improved public service delivery, economic growth and opportunity, and a life better for everyone.
Thank you very much for watching. So just to come back to that, and I'm happy to take questions later on, but to come back to that, because I'm sure there will be lots of questions. Ethics First was designed over the last 2.5 years after several years of interactions with small and growing businesses, actually with the entire private sector in at least 5 to 15 African countries, through surveys, through focus group discussions to understand what are the challenges to small and growing businesses across the continent. And a lot of times, there are several challenges that would come up, as you would know, right? But corruption was always one of those things that came up, and we thought we needed to dissect this corruption issue, because how does the private sector address corruption as an external problem? And so we started to think about and talk to the private sector, small businesses especially, about what their challenges look like. And honestly, it just is true that corruption drives up the cost of doing business for small and growing businesses. And what's worse is preventing corruption in some cases is risky, but it's also very expensive. And so we figured what we could do was create a system where small businesses feel incentivized in different ways to prevent corruption in the operations, but also find strength in numbers, in collectively working towards one goal, which is to reduce corruption, increase trust, and build business transparency and accountability as a norm in the business community across Africa. And so that's what Ethics First helps small and growing businesses do. It helps them set up their business management systems to be resilient against unethical practices, fraud, and corruption. And the flip side of that is it incentivizes them, because through Ethics First, we're able to attract funding for small and growing businesses. So investors who often worry about KYC due diligence, or they worry about the integrity of a business they are putting their money into. You're talking a US company that has Foreign Corrupt Practices Act exposure or UK Bribery Act exposure. This is the sort of assurance that Ethics First can build into the potential investees that they work with. So when Uncle Bamkole talked about collaboration and Osayi talked about innovation, I see how in the big picture, once we're able to build an ecosystem of businesses that are more trustworthy, they've built trust amongst themselves because they share the same integrity code and can demonstrate commitment to that code, then you'll have more innovation and more collaboration, and we'll be able to bring in more investment into the SGB ecosystem. So we're very excited about Ethics First. I invite you to visit www.ethicsfirst.site.org. And I also invite you to explore opportunities to collaborate, because we're already collaborating with the newest member of the AND West Africa chapter, Rainbow Consult, has been a site partner for going on 3-4 years now. And we're collaborating with Impact Amplifier. And so there's lots of opportunities for you to leverage Ethics First and to collaborate with us on Ethics First. And I look forward to talking more about it with you all at some point later on in the year. So thank you so much, ANDE. This is an excellent conference going on. Thank you for the invitation to speak about Ethics First, and I'll be on standby if there are any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lola. There's actually, you have 2 questions in the chat box. One is from Banky and the other one is from, can you see the questions? What are the early wins you have seen with SGB since you started Ethics First across Africa? And how can we do Ethics First in French?
Those are fantastic questions. So first one, Uncle Banky, that's a good question. Ethics First actually launches on the 1st of August. So I'm looking forward to telling you about the quick wins when a few months in. But I can tell you one very quick thing. Before the Ethics First application itself launched, we've been trying Ethics First in a we've been trying Ethics First in a low-tech way, so in a manual way, and we've seen excellent results in Kenya that I'm happy to talk more about if we have more time. And then how can we do Ethics First in French? We're doing a big Francophone Africa push as soon as Ethics First launches. So the website itself is going to be able to translate to French and hopefully to a few other languages on the continent. But we are looking for, in DRC, Senegal, and Cote d'Ivoire, partners to join a network that supports Ethics First. So I think that question was from Kasum. If you are interested, definitely please reach out. I'll put my email in the chat box, and you can always follow up with me offline.
Thank you very much, Lola. I mean, first off, thank you for the beautiful presentation. I apologize, we can't take any more questions for Lola. Please share your contact details so that people can reach out to you. Already we are running slightly behind time and we're mindful of everyone's time, considering that this is even virtual. I want to quickly invite Wangeshi to give the presentation from Creative Metia. Wangeshi, are you here?
Yes, I am. Thank you very much, Ajoke and the Andy team. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Wangeshi. I'm joining from Nairobi, Kenya. So it's obviously afternoon where I'm sitting, but I'm so pleased and glad to be joining today. So I am Wangeshi Muriuki, and I'm leading on the African Networks practice with Creative Métier, and leading across Sub-Sahara Africa. So just a little bit about the organization, because I'm really here to talk about the panel session that we have that will be running really shortly. So Creative Métier works with networks, we're working with leaders and organizations to drive locally led, inclusive, systemic change. And together, we power positive social and economic impact that is not only sustainable, but also sustaining. So complex challenges are navigated with certainty so that people thrive and economies also prosper. So we are working with locally led impact networks to unlock their potential to resolve the very complex social and economic challenges that Africa is facing. And so far we have a strong footprint in Sub-Saharan Africa and globally, where our work cuts across. So in short, locally led impact networks can play a critical role in strengthening business ecosystems. They bring together members, networks typically bring together members to address issues that are complex and issues that are also systemic, which tend to be really pressing and challenging. And our experience and previous work and research clearly demonstrates with evidence that impact networks have the potential to deliver significant impact and change by aligning key stakeholders or members who often come together to strengthen maybe financial or market resources or market systems, or even opportunities that are needed in order to improve on lives and also livelihoods. So we have commenced on some research work that is very exciting, supported by the Small Foundation, and we're running this on 4 impact networks in West Africa. The research is aimed at understanding and demonstrating their potential, their reach, their business models, and more so the challenges that they are currently experiencing, in order to find ways or solutions and to really help us in articulating those challenges. And these findings will be disseminated at some point to a wider community of stakeholders, including funders, including networks, and other organizations that are interested in working with networks. I would like to say that the research builds upon our work that we started in East Africa, working with other networks, and this has been going on for the last 2 years, in which we have been able to test and demonstrate the potential of the network's approach. So I'm here to welcome you to our panel that will be taking place very, very soon, and we hope that you can participate. And the session is on adopting a network approach to deepen engagement, to strengthen inclusion and drive economic growth. So we'll be hearing perspectives and reflections from local networks within West Africa that are participating in the research, and more so to hear about how they are embedding the approach to their work. So if you're there, you are a network, for instance, and you're interested in thinking about this approach, or you're interested in this work, we kindly welcome you to join, participate, engage, ask questions, and let's learn together. So thank you very much, and we look forward to seeing you all. Thank you.